Hello. We're going to go ahead and use all that practice of the proportion of the face as well as those features to make a portrait or at least a portion of a portrait. And our work is going to be inspired by the artist Ben Hine. He has a series of work, like the example that you see here, called Pencil versus Camera, and he plays on reality. So here is actually an example of his work, and I want you to pay close attention. Is it completely realistic? Now, it looks very much like the person, right? It's got good proportions of the eyes, nose, and mouth. But if you pay really close attention, the background imagery is not quite what you think. Can anyone tell what that is back there? Yeah, that's Tinkerbell. So, what's Tinkerbell from? Right? She's from Peter Pan. And remember, that's about a boy who doesn't want to grow up. So, this idea of always wanting to be kind of childish could be maybe why he's representing that with this person here. If you're interested in Ben Hine's work, you can click on this link and it will take you to his website. He does a lot of illusions. Um, and so it's pretty cool. So he has a bunch of series of artworks that are based on this. And if you click on any of these, like this is the one that I was inspired by, you can see a bunch of his examples of his work. He doesn't always do portraits, but because we are doing portraits as part of the Drawing to curriculum, that's why we are. But you can load even more. So you can keep hitting this load more button to see his work. So let's go ahead and get started. I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew that we were going to have a few weeks to do this. So don't feel like you have to rush and do it all in one day. I want you to take your time and do a good job. So, your challenge is going to be to select a person within your household that you can photograph and draw. You can easily do this as yourself as well. So, I did a self portrait. I'd like you to select a theme. So your options are the following. You could do inside out. So inside out basically is how do you feel? And then how do you want others to view how you feel? So there could be maybe a contradiction between the photograph of how you feel. Maybe you look like you're all smiley, but then the portion that you have chosen to draw looks really upset or angry. So there would be like a contradiction between the photograph and the drawing. You could play on exaggerated expressions. You could play with really extreme angles. You could play with extreme anger, extreme joy, extreme happiness. You could get really silly. And then if you struggled with portraits and drawing one, you could just draw what you see that's hidden beyond the paper. I really would like to um, get you to do as the first two as much as possible and only do the third one if you really need that um, ex, um, more basic drawing. So first things first is you want to take yourself some reference photos. So I took a bunch of pictures of me, and you can tell that I'm pretty annoyed these days, and so those are where most of my expressions came from. I want to select my favorite expression, right? So this is the one I decided I was going to do. Then I'm going to select a part of the face that I'm going to draw. So you don't have to draw the whole face. If you want to, you can, but you have to draw at least two features. And so those two features should be next to each other so that we're still working in proportion. You also would want to include things like the edge of your face and your hair. So here's some choices that you have. You can do your eyes and your nose, right? Your nose and your mouth, nose, mouth, and chin, eyes and ears, right? So there's all different combinations that you can come up with. Some of these are the same combinations, but you can see that they're slightly cropped in different ways. And I made my photographs in black and white um, to help me kind of envision what they would look like um, if I were to draw them, right? So our target is to use realistic detail, proper proportion, and rendering to draw an expressive section of our face. So you're going to use your reference image to draw out the proportions of your face. You're going to refine and redraw it as much as you can to make it look as realistic. So keep in mind those different proportions, thinking about where imagery lines up with each other. So where the nose and the eyes line up, where the mouth and the eyes line up. If you're going to draw life size, you could literally measure the width of your features. I used to do this when I first started teaching drawing, where I'd have students measure the height, the width of their eyes, their nose, their mouth. So you could do that if you really needed to. So I just chose to use pencil. So I used a number 2 pencil and a sketchbook paper. It wasn't on anything fancy. And you can choose to draw um, slightly smaller than life size, larger than life size. It's entirely up to you. I would probably suggest either drawing life size or drawing slightly smaller than life size if you want it to line up really well. So you really want to make sure that you play with it until it looks like the features in the example. You're going to add value. So you get to choose either adding value in graphite, so just pencil, or color pencil. It's your choice. If we were at school, we would have done this lesson. We would have done a similar lesson using charcoal as well as colored pencil. But because we don't have those materials, I'm giving you the option. I know a lot of people had color pencil in their scavenger hunt, but I just did simple number 2 pencil. I never got out any of my fancy drawing pencils because I wanted to prove that with pressure and layering and proper holding of the pencil, that you can totally get a really great range of values. So you want to make sure that you hold your pencil properly. Remember, I can hold it really far back for light values. I can hold it really close up for darker values, right? Like these examples on the left and the right. You want to be constantly looking at your reference image in order to make it look right. Feel free to print it if you want to stay away from your technology. Then, when you think you're done shading it, you can tear or cut the picture. So you don't have to feel like you have to tear it. I tore mine out of my sketchbook and then I carefully placed it in front of my face, trying to take pictures. Now, it was really hard to take a selfie. So if you can have another person take that photo, it would be awesome. I tried a bunch of different arrangements, different facial expressions where sometimes I wanted to smile, other times I wanted to look like I was the same angry person that you saw in the drawing. You can see how because I drew bigger, it didn't line up very well. This was smashed right against my face. But I also didn't like my location. I really had to experiment. So here's a couple of examples where I went into my kitchen where I've been spending a lot more time. So I actually came up with a couple that were kind of my final, which I liked. This is how I feel. So a little grumpy, how I want others to think I feel with smiles, right? And here's some examples by students who were inspired by Ben Hine. There's a Facebook page. I never looked on Instagram, but there probably is one as well of people who did this as well. And then at the very bottom of this, I have a bunch of links that might be helpful to you. So I have tutorials on drawing ears if your ears show a lot. You could decide on your media. So I have tutorials on graphite and color pencil. And so I have all different kinds of hair that you might have, since you might have some hair in your picture. How to draw skin tone using color pencil. These are some of my demos using Prismacolors. If you don't have art color pencils, it might be frustrating to use color pencil. So I would probably use just regular pencil if it's a struggle. And here, these are realistic skin tones, but you could do expressive color if you wanted to as well. I'm okay with it not being super realistic in color. But I do have tutorials there if you choose to, because that is a part of the Drawing 2 curriculum. And then I have how to draw hair using color pencils. So I hope that helps. We'll break this apart into several small parts as we go. So don't feel like you're going to be doing this all at once.